Hi there, and welcome to the very first of the Living in Faith Every Day one-off special podcasts. This time I'm stepping outside the normal pattern and taking a look at something called personhood. Recently I've been doing some studies separate to this in relation to mental capacity. What determines the ability for someone to maintain their capacity and also express their free will. And during those studies I had to do a module that contained some material about personhood, and I thought this intersected in the most interesting way with what we as Christians think it means to be a person. Now I bet you think you know a person when you see one. For example, I'm a person, right? And you're a person. But have we always been a person? What about Ludwig van Beethoven? Was he a person? Is Ludwig van Beethoven still a person today? Or what about Martin Luther King or Freddie Mercury? Are they still people? If we widen our thoughts, we may think, what about a 9-month-old baby? Is that a person? Or what about a fetus? What about Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice? Or Spider-Man? Or CP3O? Are any of them persons? Or what about Alexa? Or Siri? Or Cortana? Are these artificial intelligences people? And what if you find out that I wasn't really real? I was just a very sophisticated avatar with a voice created by artificial intelligence. It's worth noting to philosophers, personhood is a technical term. Person doesn't equal human. To biologists, human is a biological term. You're human if you have human DNA, and that's it. But person is what we call a moral term. For theologians and most philosophers, persons are beings who are part of what's called the moral community and therefore deserve consideration. This distinction is really useful, but it can kind of complicate things as well. You see, there are plenty of people out there who think that there may be non-humans that deserve moral consideration as well, like animals. And some people think there are some humans that by their actions have terminated their right to personhood. So you can see that this gets tricky. But it is the elusiveness of what constitutes being a person which is at the core of almost every major social debate and issue that you can think of. This is right up to date. It comes to the heart of matters when we consider things like Black Lives Matter, or abortion, or animal rights, or the death penalty, or even euthanasia. And as Christians, we need, I believe, to try at some level to have a biblical understanding of personhood in order that we might begin to understand how we can relate and react to these issues and how we see ourselves and other people. Whether your passion is human rights or computers, whether it's about human capacity or artificial intelligence, science or sociology, it's really helpful to try and get a bottom line when it comes to personhood. We'll start by thinking of what constitutes a person. Now, I talked about Spider-Man. Is he a person? But is Superman a person? Now that's interesting when you consider that if you were to encounter Superman in the street, it wouldn't even cross your mind, because the way he talked and related to you would certainly indicate that he's a person. But Superman, remember, is not even human. He appears in human form, but the story is he's from Krypton, and therefore he lacks human DNA. And Superman is affected by things that humans are not affected by this imaginary thing called kryptonite. And he's also not affected by things that humans are affected by, like gravity. He can fly. So calling him a human is certainly incorrect, but most of us, if we were to meet him in the real world, would not, I think, want to deny him personhood. He may not be human, but he certainly appears to have personality. The fact that he happens to be from another planet doesn't seem to make a difference to the way we'd relate to him in a moral sense. Just like skin color or ethnic background does not make a moral difference among humans. In fact, for Superman, there are people who love him, like his adopted mum and dad on Earth, Ma and Pa Kent. Or what about Lois Lane? Although that's a difficult one. Does she love him or does she not? It's on again, off again, it appears to me. So Superman appears to be a person. In fact, if anything, Superman might appear to be more of a person than some of the human nemesises, some of the human enemies he faces in the stories. It seems to us that some of the enemies would feel less deserving of moral consideration than Superman does, because Superman can seem to be more of a person than his enemies. In fact, the reason we connect emotionally with such stories, these types of hero stories from the Marvel and DC and other universes, is because we identify with the superhero's human characteristics. Meaning we sometimes choose to have more moral empathy with what are technically good aliens than we do evil humans. But you see, there are plenty of other candidates for non-human personality as well. What about artificial intelligence, as seen in things like HAL, the computer from 2001: A Space Odyssey, or Wall-E, the cartoon, or other animated characters like Woody or Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story? Do they have a sort of non-human form of personality when we relate to them? And in an even more complicated and nuanced way, what about animals, particularly monkeys and great apes? Does their level of intelligence and their ability to feel pain and emotion, does that grant them personhood? If you believe that intelligence or sensory development are the criteria for establishing personhood, then you're probably able to arrive at a point where you believe that fetuses, although clearly human, are not yet persons. You can perhaps even reach a point where you believe that humans, when they existing in human bodies, but if they find themselves in comas or persistent vegetative states, or people who experience complete and irreversible loss of brain function, then you are able perhaps to reach an opinion where they are no longer considered persons to you. Maybe then even the old and the infirm will lose their personhood little by little in your estimation. So the question then becomes, is it possible to be human, but yet no longer be a person? You see, these different views of personhood lie at the heart of what explains why people disagree about things like abortion, euthanasia, and even capital punishment. It all seems to come down to this one question: what capacity must one possess to be part of our moral community? What must one have to be deserving of moral consideration? There are 5 views held about this coming from within the secular world. Some of them, I believe, clash dramatically with the Christian worldview, but for some perhaps it is more nuanced. And it is these 5 views we'll take a look at next.